You don't need to be early.
Continue on. You get awesome training. Yeah, that's really.
All right. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot for coming along. Make a start. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, go for it. So just closing the door up. Thanks a lot, everyone, for coming along. Hopefully you're all well fed and, I don't know, well drunk is probably not the right word. You had a good drink. My name's Simon Waite, for those of you who don't know. A lot of familiar faces, some ones that are new as well. Thanks a lot for coming along tonight for our November meetup. I will put that down before I spill it on something. So those who came last month would have noticed that we were downstairs. Hopefully next month we'll be back downstairs again. Trying again tonight to live stream this, and also it'll show up on our video on demand channel on YouTube, hence me wearing this. Hopefully it's loud enough and you can see the picture if you're watching this online. So in future, if you can't make it to these events, hopefully you'll be able to catch up after the fact. Tonight, pizza and beer, we've already had those. I've also tried to destroy my laptop, which I have failed to do, thankfully, because I don't think insurance would cover me doing that. Now I've also recorded that on a live video stream, so I have no chance of ever claiming that it was an accident, even though it was. We're going to talk about what's new in Azure since we last got together, which was back at the beginning of October. And then Tom Bromby, who I work with at Cloud Solutions, is going to talk to us about lessons learned in deploying Azure ExpressRoute, which is Microsoft's private cloud cross-connectivity solution that you can consume through a number of different channels here in Australia. Upcoming events, our December meetup is 21st of December. We are planning on giving away a Surface Pro 4. You must be registered, and you must turn up, and you must check in when you turn up to have a chance to win that Surface Pro 4, plus bring some ID. We will take a photo of you and post it on our website, so make sure you're happy for that to happen as well. If you work for Telstra or Cloud, you can't win, sorry. Yeah, that's thanks to Telstra. That'll be at our December event. Aaron, who's with us here tonight, will be talking about lessons learned from large-scale, complex Azure deployments that always succeed every time you push a button, like everything. And then there's Ignite next year in February on the Gold Coast. So myself and a couple of other guys in the room tonight will be presenting there. If you haven't thought about registering for it, recommend you go and have a look. If you went to the Satya Nadella event that was on last week in Sydney, there's actually a pre-registration code you can get for that that'll get you some money off tickets for the event if you want to go and pre-register. Now that email came out today, you may not have seen it. There was a follow-up email that basically sent out a code you can use when you check out that will give you effectively, I think, early bird prices for tickets. So put that in the calendars for next year. Just as a heads up, we probably won't do one of these in January because most people will either be on holiday or recovering from the Christmas get-togethers that they've had to collectively go to. And we'll start again in February, our date yet to be determined, hopefully back at Tankstream Labs here in Sydney. So in preview, this month was actually a bigger list than I expected for all the service announcements. I mean, Microsoft's always busy, but for some reason the last month or so has been a busy month for announcements. Microsoft's moving a lot more into helping you consume Azure and understanding how you can consume Azure. And previously we saw the launch of Security Center, and they've now launched this thing called Azure Advisor. That's only just shipped this last week. At the moment, if you want to go and have a look at it, you do need to follow a special hidden link in your portal. I will drag this screen up onto the other screen so you can see it. Let's see, right way, good. And what it does is it gives you a series of recommendations based on improving the availability of your services, security, performance of your services, and the cost. This is in Cloud's New South Wales sandbox, so we don't do production stuff in here, so the recommendations are pretty tame in the grander scheme of things. Across all the services in the subscription, it'll probably be a bit like turning on Security Center. If you haven't in your subscription already, you'll turn it on and suddenly worry about all the things you didn't realize you needed to worry about. But that's what it's there for. And it's a direct compete, I guess, against the Advisor service that AWS offers in their cloud, help you consume and understand how you're consuming their services. So the number one thing is obviously going to be a cost tell me where I can save some dollars. Still early days for this. The recommendations take a while to filter through once you turn them on, because they have to start collecting metrics about different aspects of the subscription that you said that you're interested in doing this for. But over time, that'll fill out. And that's a space that Microsoft's spending a lot of time in. Azure SQL Database also has that as well. The performance tuning metrics that they recommend are all machine learning based. So they have a massive big pool where they send all the performance metrics of your database over a period of time, and then they'll recommend tuning options that you can apply to your SQL database to make it perform better. You mean the metrics?
Yeah.
I honestly don't know for this. Security Center creates a storage account to write metrics. I would assume under the covers is probably using storage account somewhere to hold that information. I guess there's if it is. Yeah. So I think the general question was more around when this generates recommendations, obviously it's holding the data to do that somewhere. Security Center actually creates a storage account to do that for you in the subscription that you're running it in. I haven't looked under the covers on this to see how it's doing that at the moment.
Up to many gigabytes of data based on some of the other auditing and metrics.
Oh, quite possibly. I mean, if you turned on collectively all of the metrics and logging information, yeah. But when you're paying 0.001 of a cent per gigabyte, it's probably not too much of an overhead. You're going to have to. Oh, certainly it does add up. That's why this service exists. So that's Advisor. You can go and follow the blog entry from the team announcing it. Has a really good description on how it works and the link to actually get through to that blade, which isn't discoverable at the moment in the portal. You have to follow a specific link to get to it. App Service launched a URL authorization capability, so it's actually baked into App Service itself. So you deploy a JSON file which controls how endpoints are accessible to the general public or not. So you can require they're authenticated or that they're anonymous. If you've ever worked with ASP.NET, then it'd be fairly similar to doing access control in the web.config file, except here you're actually removing it from having a reliance on ASP.NET and just making it part of the app service pipeline. That's new this week as well, so you can just upload a file into your app service web app root, and then it will access control the subfolders that you've got. That's a good change because it means that if you're not using ASP.NET or ASP.NET Core, then you don't have to worry about .NET config files. You can just upload a JSON file with a specific format and have those capabilities available to your solution. I haven't looked heavily at it. There are different ways of controlling authentication. App Service itself has the ability to be access controlled through Azure Active Directory. It's actually a part of the service already. So I would assume that if you turn that on, then this file's not going to help you much, because effectively once you turn that on for an app, a web app, you have to be authenticated through Azure Active Directory to be able to access it. This is probably more about if you have a public service that has some access endpoints that you want to restrict, maybe by IP address or to logged in sessions, that you can do that. Yes, there was a question.
Yeah, so Azure Active Directory, is it still available for Australia?
Sorry.
Azure
Yep.
Active Directory, is it available for Australia region?
So Azure Active Directory, the question was, is Azure Active Directory available in the Australian region? Microsoft refers to Azure Active Directory as a geo-available or a globally available service. So they don't actually provide like a local home tenant version in the Australian geography. You'll find when you provision an Azure Active Directory tenant that it will give you a geography that it's closely associated to, but that's not a guarantee that the data or the location or infrastructure that's running on is actually homed in Australia or wherever the region is. I think there are some specifics around that to do with things like the Azure Gov North America, where obviously there's some differences there, but Azure Active Directory at the moment is kind of this geo-replicated, highly available service. When you hit an endpoint, it could be being served from any data center anywhere in the world. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Does it also apply to B2C as well?
Azure Active Directory B2C. So the question was, does that also apply to Azure Active Directory B2C? No, it doesn't. So Azure Active Directory B2C is not actually Azure Active Directory under the covers. It has very similar features and it leverages things like Graph API, but it's not actually Azure Active Directory underneath. So it's a completely standalone service that a team built, and it's kind of been surfaced as an Azure Active Directory component because it kind of sits well with the B2B, B2E type scenarios that the existing Azure AD solution provides, but it's completely designed for consumers.
Is it ACS just rebadged?
No, it's not ACS, just rebadged. There's a lot more to it. Yeah, it can do similar things to ACS, such as act as a token broker for third-party identity providers like Facebook and Google and Microsoft accounts, but it does a lot more than ACS ever did before. But to your question, that is geographically deployed. It's not currently available in Australia. It's currently only available out of North America, so you either have to deploy it in a US data center or out of Canada. Nothing that the team's talking publicly about yet. So it will come eventually, like most services, but there's no public information on when that will happen. I'll admit I'm waiting for it. I've got customers that I'm working with on B2C that would love to use it. We may deploy in North America in the meantime after we've gone through necessary due diligence to have that approved. But the B2C team knows there's a demand for it here, but like Azure Active Directory geographically deployed, they have to stand up infrastructure to host it in each geo that it goes in, and you can't even create trial tenants anymore. They've removed that capability, so they weren't very clear about that before they went GA. So if I went in trying to create a test tenant locally, and it was like, nope. Okay. Cool. The thing with B2C is it's closed by default. There's no sharing available. When you register as a B2C user, you control your profile. Your data is private because you're a consumer. Azure Active Directory B2B or B2E for your enterprise users is open by default, and you'd be able to see other people's profiles and all those sorts of things with the right permissions, of course. We'll keep going. What I might suggest, we might keep questions to the end of this section while we do cut over with pizza and beer before Tom gets up. But we'll keep going through this. So everyone's favourite topic, containers. Containers everywhere in Azure. Maybe we'll have to call it Microsoft Container Service next year. But yeah, look, what's not to love about containers? They remove a lot of the complexity around underlying infrastructure. They do change the developer lifecycle a little bit, I think, which is going to be an interesting challenge. And having seen administrators deal with containers, I think there's probably some administrator challenges as well. But Microsoft loves them. Docker is not the only container service out there, even though it's the one that most people talk about. Microsoft has their own container solution on Windows Server, and Container Service has the ability to host more than just Docker. Having said that, this month they announced a preview of an Azure Docker registry or an Azure Container Registry, which is a private hosted Docker registry. So if you're deploying Docker images into your Azure environment, you can now put a registry as a service up in the cloud and use that as your source of your Docker images. And they announced that they've now supporting Kubernetes 1.4. Can I just get someone to push the aircon button over there? Hopefully it comes back on so we don't all swelter in here. I don't know. Press it and see what happens. If only we had someone in the room who understood technology. Big data. So another part of the cloud that we all love is the big data world. So HD Insights, which is Microsoft's managed Hadoop offering, now supports Kafka. I must admit, I haven't gone and looked heavily at that. It's not my area of expertise. If you're a big data BI guy, you probably love that news. If not, then it sounds a lot like a book from history that people like to read when they do English literature. And then Azure Data Lake, which has GA'd, so we'll see that in the GA that they've announced that there's preview tooling now available for Visual Studio if you want to go in and play with Data Lake. So Data Lake's kind of this bottomless pit that you can just throw unstructured data into. It's basically a massive HDFS Hadoop file system capable storage mechanism, only available in the US at the moment though. More in preview. Okay, cool. So everyone's favorite on-prem cloud provider, Azure Stack. Tech preview, the team's added the ability to run PaaS services down on Azure Stack, so web apps, mobile apps and API apps. And they've actually now got the ability to support, this isn't Azure SQL Database, this is actually SQL Server and MySQL. So they have resource providers that are plugging into the resource manager aspects that Azure Stack supports that allows you to basically orchestrate the build and deployment of SQL Server clusters and other things down on-prem, so you can obfuscate a lot of that work away from what you would normally do. And you can then use your resource manager templates as well to go away and deploy those things. So the goal there is to have a kind of a consistent deployment model, regardless of whether it's in your data center running Azure Stack or in Azure running Azure Resource Manager. We'll see where that ends up. It's only TP2. I'm not sure if there's a TP3 in the winds at some point in February. Okay, so it's going to be, I would imagine, a fairly lengthy journey for that, because it's something Microsoft needs to get right when it goes live for the first time, which is part of the reason that they've chosen to go with dedicated hardware vendors in the first instance, so someone doesn't try and run it on their Mac Mini underneath their desk and then complain about the fact that it doesn't perform very well. Azure SQL Database now supports up to 10 years of backup, so you can go in and click of a few buttons, you can retain data for up to 10 years if you have such a requirement, which is great because you can now meet ATO requirements plus 3 years, which is good. To your point around storage, though, obviously there's an overhead long-term about storage around that. Cool storage, sorts of things. Generally, backups, though, come with a bunch of infrastructure around the outside of it, so you pay generally a little bit more than you would for just standard storage, because you've got all the management infrastructure around that. And then continuing the journey to disassemble SQL Server and make each component as a service offering in Azure, we now have Azure Analysis Services, which is an as-a-service offering that you can use as a replacement for SQL Server Analysis Services if you want to. No word on reporting services, although Power BI, if you're still in love with reporting services, I would suggest. Sorry?
They did it once.
Yes, and then they realised the error of their ways and quickly withdrew it, thankfully, for those of us. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pricing challenges in the cloud. It's not just a technical one, there's also pricing challenges. Okay, so that's in preview. Busy month. Available. Yes. Azure Functions. Who's using Azure Functions? Yeah. So it's a great service. If you haven't had a look at it, I'm surprised you haven't heard of it, because it seems every man and their dog, myself included, has been blogging about it, talking about it, using it for things that it probably wasn't designed to be used for, but it's still being used for. Azure Functions is an abstraction on top of Azure Web Jobs. Started life as a script engine on top of Azure Web Jobs, which removes a lot of the underlying boilerplate code that you would typically write for an Azure Web Job, and just provides you with a really nice, clean programming model using, at the moment, either C#, F#, or Node.js, and come with develop massively scalable event-driven applications with very little effort. You combine that with something like Service Bus, and you're on a winner.
It's also one step closer towards ARM, because it shuts down the need for worker roles and web roles.
Correct. Yeah. So it's absolutely a good use case as a modern replacement for worker roles. Definitely. Web roles, you can certainly do REST APIs using functions. It's kind of designed as a compete for AWS Lambda, but I'd actually say it's a much richer solution than Lambda, because it supports a lot more languages, and isn't really designed as Lambda is to do a lot of stuff inside of the cloud environment. You can do a lot of different things with these, not necessarily always in Azure. Webhooks, APIs, you name it, you can do it. So definitely worth having a look at it if you haven't. In the open on GitHub, if you find issues, you raise bugs, they'll do it in the open. They don't do a lot of stuff behind closed doors, and it's really good to see that. Met the team a couple of weeks ago, and it's just really jazzed about the way they're going about doing things, which is cool. They even got their own slide. Other generally available services. I mean, what could come after Azure Functions? So compute. This one was a big piece of news this week. Everyone has always struggled with requiring 2 VMs load balanced in an availability set to meet the availability SLA in the cloud. It's kind of like you've probably heard that at some point. Microsoft's been listening. They're doing a lot of work in other spaces in the compute infrastructure to make big changes on the way this works going forward. This week they announced 99.9% SLA for single instance VM, so that's one VM on its own, not in the availability set. Only proviso is that it must be running on premium storage. It's definitely worth having a look at if you have existing workloads in your data center that just will never support load balancing in any way, shape or form, that's a good way to get an SLA-backed solution. Obviously, 99.9 is not 99.95 or 99.99, so you still need to consider what that means for your service availability. And there's no other cloud provider that has that level of support at the moment for VMs. Premium storage. So that's why they put it onto premium storage. Is SSD-backed storage that has higher throughput and is really the direction Microsoft's taking the storage tier. So traditional storage was all JBOD under the covers with some really smart controller technology custom developed over the top of it. And what they've done is they're gradually replacing all of those traditional spinning metal disks with SSDs.
Also too, preserving host updates is something that Microsoft put out back in 2014, which basically is a way to update the host without restarting the guests. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you Google search for preserving host updates, you'll find it.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff's been looped back into Server 2016. So you're starting to see a lot of that stuff come down into your DC now if you're looking to adopt Server 2016. We talked about this last month. There's a new series, the AV2 series, which have a lower price point than the traditional A series. They launched just this week. I don't think they're available yet in Australia, but hopefully they will come at some point in the future. I know the SAP HANA instances are not here yet. They're pretty amazing. They're like 4 to 32 terabytes of memory and 8 terabytes of disk. Interestingly, they only run Linux. So if you look at the certifications they have to run SAP HANA on these machines, they're all either SUSE or Red Hat Linux under the covers, which would obviously be being driven by SAP for that. You need to ask for those on request. So I have a customer that's going through that at the moment for a little while. And then schedule power down of VMs. As Tom pointed out to me earlier this week, there's no scheduled power on just yet, but I would assume that will come in future because without it, you're going to have to do a lot of work figuring out what you need to turn back on, either that or script it. That comes out of the DevTest Labs capability that Microsoft has, and it's a feature that was in there, and they've obviously looked at that and had a lot of feature requests from people going, why can't I have that on my normal everyday VM? And that's now a thing that's shipped.
That still makes sense if you're doing stress tests or something, so listen if it lasts up to the weekend and then stuff it, run it again.
Sure, absolutely, yep.
It's
Yeah.
Good for personal testing as well.
Yeah.
We always leave our VMs running.
Yeah. Backup and DR, everyone's favourite topic, and Stefan talked to us about ASR earlier in the year. It was a good session. So as your backup server, which is actually a server that you install on-prem, there's now the capability to hook into the native VMware APIs to orchestrate backups out of that without actually having to install agents down on ESX hosts. So that's really quite nice. It's just kind of under the covers doing the right things with the APIs that VMware is providing. As well, so obviously your backups are only as good as the security you have around them. If someone can come in and delete all your backups, you're probably not in a good state. Now you can actually have additional levels of protection where someone has to enter a PIN before they can delete a backup. There's a retention period for deleted backups of up to 2 weeks, so you can go back and recover accidentally or on purpose, hopefully not, deleted backups. And activity alerts, so certain things in the backup infrastructure will send out activity alerts to administrators that you've defined, so you can figure out if Billy Bob, who should actually have left the company 6 months ago, is trying to delete something because you didn't delete their account, which never happens, of course.
So it's a kind of a recycling bin.
Sorry?
The deleted items retention. So when you delete it, go
Yep.
and sit in the recycling bin.
Yep. Yeah, I would imagine after 14 days, don't raise a support ticket to try and get it back though, because it'll really be gone. And then VM backup. So we've had encrypted disk support for full VMs for most of this year. Backups now support the ability to back up and restore encrypted disks, which is a must-have if you've got encrypted VMs. You don't want to have to unencrypt the disk just so you can back it up or to restore it. So that's good. And then finally, in the VM backup, in the VM blade in the portal, you now have backup as an option right there in the blade, as if you needed to be reminded that you should be backing up all your things anyway. But it's there for developers like me who don't do that stuff normally. Generally available. Oh, containers. Who'd have thought it? DCOS upgraded to 1.84. If you're a container guy, that'll make you excited. The ACS engine is open source. You can go to GitHub and actually look at the code that sits behind the container service engine. It's quite interesting to go and have a look at how that service has been stood up. And then the Visual Studio Team Services now has the ability to build and release, manage Docker-based containers. So that's quite good if you've got a developer workflow that uses containers as part of that process. You can now use VSTS as your source code build and deployment engine if you want to. You don't need to go off and use things like TeamCity or Jenkins, all those sorts of things. It's just there out of the box. Application Insights, GA, so that's been around for a while, over a year in preview. They kept the free tier and added a premium tier on. Premium tier gives you a little bit longer duration of information stored for analysis purposes and gives you some extra bells and whistles around what you can do with certain types of infrastructure. If you're not using that, worth having a look at it if you do custom application development or you want to analyze VMs. Some of the performance metric stuff in virtual machines actually leverages Application Insights to go off and manage metrics. So Microsoft believes in it, and the portal that you all know and love uses Application Insights to track behaviors and performance and errors in the portal as well. Big data and analytics, so R server. So if you like talking like a pirate, you can now talk like a pirate with HD Insight. R server is a language for data and analytics. Comes from a business that Microsoft acquired earlier this year or late last year. They have a thing called R server, which is not for pirates; it's for data analysts. I got a laugh from one person. I'll keep it up until everyone laughs. Yeah. Yeah, an eye patch. Yes. Yeah. Well done. Yes. Hey, took me a while. And then, as I said before, Azure Data Lake is now GA, so that's available in a couple of regions in the US. It's really good if you're doing a lot of IoT type work and you just need a place to store all your raw data. Put a Stream Analytics processor on an event hub, take all the IoT events off and write them off to Data Lake, and then analyze them or delete them when you realize that you don't know how to analyze them at some later point in time. Or you could use the Data Lake Analytics to analyze them. So it's a good service. I'm using it at the moment as basically just a dumping ground for a lot of data coming out of the service that I'm building. It's really good because you can go and browse the data in a web browser as well if you really want to. I mean, I'm not generating enough data that's an issue for me. If you're generating millions of messages, you're obviously not looking at it in a web browser, I hope. Either that or you're spending a lot of time paging through data on the screen. And then IoT, Hub Device Management and Gateway SDK went GA. Yeah. Yep.
The application insights, you mean the application insights API that's just been made available, or because application insights have always been there?
It's been in preview, so it only became generally available. So generally available. Do you understand the difference between preview? So it's only become generally available in the last the applications insights service. So the SDKs. So it's when they're talking about generally available, they talk about it at a service level usually. So when you talk about the application insights API is generally available, it's actually the whole service offering is now generally available. Yeah, it was in preview for over a year. There are other services that are like that still that are floating around that most people are going, will they ever become generally available? And then IoT, as I said. This one was interesting. OpenAI, which is part of Elon Musk's stable of things in the world, plumped for Azure as their cloud platform of choice. And Microsoft made a lot of song and dance about that. AI, machine learning is kind of a big space. I think we'll see a lot of growth in. A lot of the kind of, as I was saying up front, a lot of the recommendation-based stuff that you now start to see in Azure is coming out of Microsoft's machine learning and artificial intelligence services. Hopefully next year we're going to get someone in to come and talk about Azure Cognitive Services, which is a really cool developer-based API for building your own AI type solutions. It's actually very powerful. At the end of a few REST calls, you can do a lot with that. And a lot of the machine learning stuff's driving recommendations around SQL Server, Security Center, all those sorts of things. So Security Center, if you turn on the advanced version of Security Center, it will use ML to do analytics of the traffic on your virtual network. and make suggestions where it thinks you might have some abnormal behaviours happening based on what it's witnessed in the past and what it's seeing now. So it's actually quite freaky. Microsoft backs themselves on that. Eventually, they're saying they'll do things like turn on automatic Azure SQL database tuning based on the analysis that their machine learning routines will do, and then manage that over time. And if it looks like it has an adverse impact, switch it off. But they're kind of saying we really know this stuff, and they're investing heavily in it. So I think that's probably going to be the next battleground in the cloud, will be machine learning. Okay, so that's it for me. Before we get Tom up here to get started on his session, if you want to grab, there's not much in the way of pizza left, but there's plenty of beer, which is probably a good situation. Come and grab a beer and some pizza if you want, and then we'll get Tom going in kind of 5 minutes or so, if that works for everybody. If you need to go to the gents, out the door, and follow the signs with the little man on it.
Are we on live now?
Second best option.
Yeah.
All right. All right. You are.
Okay, I'm going to come over here where the beer is. So. All right. Thanks very much, Simon. That was learned a lot of interesting things just there. So save me reading the Azure blog every day. Hi guys, thanks for coming tonight. My name is Tom Bromby. I'm an infrastructure consultant at Cloud Solutions. As we've discussed, we'll be talking through Microsoft ExpressRoute tonight. So basically what we'll talk about tonight is a little bit of the why you'd use ExpressRoute. There are other options apart from ExpressRoute. Where does ExpressRoute set in your strategy for connecting to the Azure cloud and Office 365? We'll walk through a bit of the architecture on the different options for connectivity, both at the physical layer and also on the API layer. And then we'll walk through, I guess, some of the permutations of the private connectivity, the public connectivity, and the Office 365 connectivity. So it's a reasonably topical subject of late with some of the developments in the Office 365 space. We'll get to that near the end and talk through, I guess, what the impact that might be on your plans to adopt Office 365 on ExpressRoute. Yes, it is.
You need to boot it up. Yeah, you go.
It's just because it's not focused.
Sorry.
I would miss that.
We surely are.
Oh, yep, all good. Thanks very much. All right, so Microsoft Cloud in the context of ExpressRoute consists of a few different services, both private and public services. So we'll just step through some of those and what they might be. And basically, it boils down to three main flavors, and these will be the three pairing options you'll have with ExpressRoute. The private pairing is your extending your data center in Azure, or treating Azure as another data center location. This will look at infrastructure as a service. Generally, your compute and private networks. So in Azure, when you're looking at running up an infrastructure as a service, you're using their software-defined network within Azure, which is based on Hyper-V and NVGRE, so encapsulated routing within. So it's all software-defined networking, layer 3 within the server space. Public services in Azure, there's a whole bunch, and we've just heard of some new ones tonight with functions. There's the apps. What we're looking in the context of networking and an experience of cloud is the data operations is probably the most impactful one you're looking at when you're looking at connectivity options. So this is shifting large sets of data in and out. So some of the obvious ones is backup as a service using the Azure backup, site recovery using ASR, and potentially other large storage processes. So putting data sets into storage accounts, taking them back out. So that can be impactful if you're trying to do that across the public network. That's public, correct. And finally, those traditional Office end user facing services. So Skype for Business, SharePoint Online, and Exchange Online. So traditionally, we've had all that stuff on-prem, and now people are moving into hybrid Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and the Cloud PBX for Skype for Business will be coming. I don't know if we've got a roadmap sometime next year. So those are some fairly sensitive, network-sensitive applications we're talking about. So disregarding ExpressRoute, what are your options for connecting? On the Azure, so having those privately routable networks within Azure, you really need a site-to-site VPN. So in Australia, obviously, with our geography challenges and running services across the internet, that we're running site-to-site VPNs from sites into the central data center already. So that's kind of an extension of that. For those public services, everything's got a public endpoint. It's all public IP addresses that are available over the internet. And similarly for the Office 365 services, those were designed to be securely accessed over the internet. So what are the drawbacks of using the internet or a site-to-site VPN over the internet? When we're looking at the private connectivity, you may be running site-to-site VPNs for your sites, or you may be moving to an MPLS managed high-performance network, in which case having a site-to-site VPN to Azure won't be consistent with the rest of your design. You might be trying to relinquish control of those edge routers to a provider, and then you'll have to stand up an ISR or a Palo Alto or something on the edge to cater for connectivity to Azure. potentially you have lower throughput. You're sending that tunnel across the public internet, so you have no control over the path it takes. It could be potential latency, could be fluctuations during the day and the night. As that path changes, that's all up to your ISP. What we're looking at with the public public connectivity, those connections will be going through from your managed WAN, will be going through your internet proxy or gateway at the edge. So those might be spec'd size for a certain amount of throughput for general internet traffic. Once you start shifting through large data operations through there, you're going to face contention. Your network proxies, your internet proxies may suffer as a result, performance may suffer, and you may suffer congestion on that link out. So your options there are deal with the low performance or upsize, and the upsize can carry quite a price tag, obviously, and similar problems with the Office 365 services we're seeing. And once that cloud PBX comes in, if you want to run Skype for Business through Office 365, you have no quas in those links, no guarantee on that service, and that's real time as well. So any latency or congestion is going to be felt by the end users. So enter ExpressRoute. ExpressRoute basically takes the internet out of it. Your network, you deal with a partner to basically give you that layer 1 connectivity through to Microsoft. You run circuits straight into their routers, so there's no internet. Everything's managed end-to-end either by yourself, your service provider, or Microsoft. So there's SLAs all the way across. And then you would get those options for private pairing to your compute network, public pairing to your apps, your storage, your functions, everything else that's running in there, and private connectivity to your Office 365 services. So these are the 3 pairing types: private, public, and Office 365. You have the choice of doing 1, 2, and potentially 3 of those options. How can you go about connecting? So again, there's another 3 options for connecting. We generally don't see a lot of this anymore, the layer 2 connectivity through to ExpressRoute. Most of our customers we're dealing with are using either an exchange provider. So a couple of the names that we deal with quite often is Equinix with their Cloud Exchange and Megaport's option. Equinix have the POP in Equinix Data Center, and Megaport are in Global Switch and Equinix, I believe. Also, as part of Telstra with Telstra using their Cloud Gateway product, which is basically an extra leg off a managed IP VPN or an MPLS network. So there's pros and cons of both, advantages and disadvantages, and we'll step through the first and third one. We won't spend much time on that, but we can.
Ask a quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that available today?
The Cloud Gateway?
Through Telstra and MPLS?
Yes, absolutely. So we've got customers on them already. It's an interesting product. It's also under development as well, so there's features in the roadmap coming on, but basically you can do everything in it now. Yep. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that later on. First one, I'll just pause for a sip of beer. So the exchange service provider model, this suits customers who have maybe a rack or half a rack within a colo, like say Equinix or Global Switch. It's pretty good in my opinion, gives you a lot of options. There is a little more complexity in setting this up compared to the other options. You have to do a little more thought and design around your network. It's a one-off, it's not an ongoing complexity. Complexities, you get a little more choice around how you connect, a little more flexibility. You can do some interesting things with this. Basically, the way it works is you'll have your presence or your service provider on your behalf have a presence in the colo, rack or half rack. You'll get someone to spin up a couple of cross connects out the top of your rack across the meet me room, on the chassis of the exchange service provider. So whether that's Cloud Exchange or Megaport. Once you have that layer 1 connectivity, then you can tap into the SDN which runs inside these and start carving out virtual circuits. So for Azure alone, you would have one virtual circuit that runs through, and that also has connectivity directly into the Microsoft Edge routers. Exchange service providers are multi-cloud, so it's not only Azure, you can do your AWS, a whole bunch of other clouds, and they've both got exhaustive lists of different providers they can tap into off that same physical connection. So if you already have a presence in those locations, it can be quite cost effective rather than running an Ethernet link point to point, and quite flexible. On the flip side, the network service provider model. So this is a bit of a high-level view of the Telstra Cloud Gateway, which replaces the Cloud Direct Connect, which they ran with before, which is more of that point-to-point connectivity. You have your existing MPLS cloud connected to your sites. Telstra essentially run a MPLS cloud in the middle, which pairs with yours and then pairs with Azure or other cloud provider. Basically, all you need to do to set this up is obviously fill out the form Telstra, spin up the circuit spin up the ExpressRoute circuit in the portal or through PowerShell. Give them the service key; they'll do everything for you. It'll all come up. You tell them if you're on private, public, or Microsoft Office 365 pairing, and it'll just automatically appear. One of the advantages of this is obviously if you've already got that MPLS with Telstra, there's no extra hardware or connectivity you need to provision through. It's just an extra service you tack on. We'll talk a little bit around public ASN and IP later on. It's impactful in other places, but basically with private pairing, it's pretty straightforward. You can assign a private autonomous system number and private IPs. That's pretty easy. With the public and Office 365, you have to supply a public ASN and a range of public IPs that are registered the ASN. And it's really getting more and more difficult now to get those out of companies like, or organizations like AppNic. So Telstra will provide that as part of the service, and they'll source that off their routers. So that's a little bit of complexity that goes away. There is one little bug. You'll provision your ExpressRoute circuit, they'll do the pairing, but those pairings will show up in the portal as disabled. It's an issue with the portal. It's on the backlog of the portal team and Microsoft to fix that. But yeah, once it's done, they'll show up as disabled, the ExpressRoute. However, if you try to enable those links, you'll pretty much break everything and have to raise a ticket with Microsoft. And yeah, it's a whole nightmare doing that. So I've been told it's going to be fixed, but
So PowerShell's actually disabled or enabled?
both, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's disabled in PowerShell as well. Double check, but okay. So we'll talk through a little bit around the private pairing. This is kind of the thing everyone's doing. The public and Office 365 are being done, but this is kind of the default first cab off the rank, if you will, around ExpressRoute. Moving away from those site-to-site VPNs and having a full layer 3 managed link through to that Azure presence. ExpressRoute works as it's based on BGP, so once you have paired your network with the Azure network, the virtual network prefixes will be advertised through to your network. It's up to you how you manage that. You might have BGP on the edge and OSPF or manual route tables on the inside. That's something for the network team to work out. But those routes will come through the ExpressRoute connectivity. And conversely, you'll advertise your public IP range into Azure. So again, talking around the SDN within Azure, you divide off subnets, but basically by default, everything's routable, and your gateway is your next hop out, basically to the internet or off to your private network if you've advertised those routes in. Oops. Probably the main thing to call out with the initial setup is how you're going to force that traffic to operate. By default, your VMs will talk straight out to the internet. A lot of organizations find that unpalatable, so they'll force the traffic back inside by advertising that default route. That just tends to break a bunch of stuff as well. So KMS for one, for all your Windows machines running. Also any public IPs, you'll make the request over the internet to the public IP, but instead of responding back to you, that public IP will route back internally, and obviously your firewalls and proxies inside will traffic, so that can break as well. Better alternative if you want to really have control of that traffic is spin up some network virtual appliances and create a proper DMZ within Azure and have that traffic go out across the and pulling it all back inside. You can connect multiple virtual networks to the same ExpressRoute circuit. The vanilla ExpressRoute circuit is 10 VNets by default, all in the same region. So you'll spin up your ExpressRoute circuit for each virtual network. We create a gateway subnet, which has to be called gateway subnet, and create a ExpressRoute gateway within that. And we just connect those. And it's pretty simple. You can do all this through the portal now, connect that directly to the ExpressRoute circuit. So you can have 10 of those. For every single ExpressRoute circuit, every gateway is going to be in the same routing domain. So I've had a few conversations with people in the past wanting to have separate VNets for segregation. That's not going to work because they're still going to route across to each other by default. An alternative, if you need to segregate, don't use separate VNets on the same circuit. Use network security groups, network virtual appliances, or create separate ExpressRoute circuits. That will bring the traffic back onto your routers and through your firewalls, and you can control it there. So yeah, those are the two ways to do it. On the cost side, the network egress charges won't apply when you're routing between VNets. Again, they're in the same VRF or using the same VRF filter on the Azure network plane. So you don't pay egress between VNet to VNet because it sort of does a very quick hairpin back in. Yeah, and every VNet you connect with a virtual gateway accrue a charge every month. So that's a consideration around cost as well. Another option is with multiple VNets is Azure now has VNet pairing as GA. So instead of having all your 10 VNets with gateways, you create one with one gateway, you pair the other 9 VNets to that first gateway, that first VNet. And all these paired VNets will use that as a remote gateway. So they'll basically use that Hyper-V GRE virtual network, route across, use that gateway to go out through ExpressRoute. So the benefit of that is you save a bit of cash every month by not running 10 different VPN gateways if you have 10 virtual circuits. There is a nominal charge of data transfer between those VNets when you're pairing them, but I think it's like potentially $30 a terabyte, so it's quite a lot lower than running individual gateways for each VNet. VNet pairing is only available in the same region, so it has to be in the same east or southeast.
And the same tenant.
Same tenant?
Yeah, I think it is the same tenant, yeah. And
It's different subscriptions, but
Same
same
tenant
tenant.
subscriptions, same tenant, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
If you've got two different subscriptions with different VNets, routing between them and using the same.
Well, it goes on the authorization because you have to, if you have 2 subscriptions, yeah, you can use 2 different users, but they have to be authorized for each, yeah. Or if you have 2 subscriptions with the same AD, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But I haven't tried it with 2 tenants. That's a good gotcha.
Most of our large enterprise customers will be running multiple subscriptions.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. We had an issue recently with the gateway subnets. If you provision it with a /28 and try to do a point to site connection, you've actually got to tear it and re-provision it with a /27.
Yeah.
They caught us out. It is documented, but it's not that easy to find. If you want to use ExpressRoute and say point to site connections and things like that, it's a real pain.
So I actually was talking to someone at Microsoft about this last week because I have to do a design with 30 VPNs on the same gateway. So we're going through what exactly you need to do. The way he explained to me is ExpressRoute's kind of dumb when you set it up. It doesn't just allocate the address it needs. It actually splits the VNet in half and takes half, even though it doesn't need it all. So with
the virtual gateways as well, what it's actually doing under the covers is spinning up a bunch of Windows servers
RAs.
with RAs, yeah,
and a load balancer, yeah. Yeah, it's funny when you look under the covers. A lot of the stuff, and the application gateway is the same, and it's IIS servers running AAR, and yeah.
We don't talk about that.
No, we don't. Don't want to spoil the magic.
Yeah.
And again, that'll be where the cost comes from, is running those RAs servers in the background. So, and I like the VNet pairing a lot. It sort of makes more sense to me. Coming from the old school of doing Hyper-V is we'll let the kernel do the routing. Now the premium add-on. So not by default. Add-on with Office 365. So if you're doing Office 365 pairing, it's a must-do to add that premium SKU to your ExpressRoute circuit. In the world of private pairing, basically if we establish our ExpressRoute circuit here in Sydney, we can only connect through that ExpressRoute circuit to VNets within our geopolitical region. If we add that ExpressRoute premium add-on, we can start spinning up VNets here and here and here, and those will all be routable through. And that uses a Microsoft fiber backbone. It's supposedly the second largest global network. They've invested billions and billions of dollars in it, so it's definitely a good thing to use.
What sort of cost is that if you're doing that sort of scenario?
10 times.
Oh, the data transfer, or the premium add-on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense if you're doing Office 365, but on its own, it's kind of hard to justify. Yeah, so it's if you want to do the Office 365, it's get your account manager in and from Microsoft and shake the tree a bit.
Isn't there a
Yeah.
specific SKU now for Office 365 with ExpressRoute that is separated from the premium ExpressRoute that is cheaper?
It's a very good question. I don't know if there is.
Because that fired up last year. People were just going up the wall, going, "I'm paying $10,000 a month for this."
No.
So I think they were talking about creating a separate SKU for specifically ExpressRoute's Office 365 connectivity.
Could do. I haven't heard of that firsthand, but it wouldn't surprise me. We'll step through some scenarios where you might apply it, but it's kind of a hard thing to justify on its own just to get that private connectivity going through. I mean, I like the idea of it, but yeah, $10,000 a month is you need something else. You need it as a side benefit, really. So this is sort of a sanitized design that we did with another customer who had the premium add-on. We were walking through how we'd actually implement that. So again, this was going to be a side benefit of having the premium add-on. They had a global network, I think through name escapes me, the big AT&T. That's who it was. Very congested. To upgrade the links globally was going to cost them a lot of money, and they wanted to shift everything cloud first. Everything was going to go into Azure. So it didn't make sense for them to be routing out of one region across their own WAN into another region. So we sat down, we did the design for how that global connectivity was going to work. The cloud in the middle just is sort of a logical representation of the Microsoft network. They had a presence here in Australia, Europe, and North America. So the idea was we were going to establish an ExpressRoute circuit in each region and a virtual network in each region. Each virtual network would be attached to each of the ExpressRoutes, so you can attach a VNet to up to 4 ExpressRoute circuits. And then that traffic, the routes will be advertised out of Azure and advertised, and each region would control their own route tables. So they would manage it, not having to route out of here across to here and so on and so forth. That's correct. Yep. That's big dollars. Yeah. So yeah, you need the justification for it. It's a big pill to swallow. But if you look in the grand scheme of you moving everything into the cloud, you got Office 365, and you're a fairly big organization. It's a little easier to justify, but yeah. And it makes for a good case study for these kind of things. So I'm glad they went with it.
So did you do inside of Azure between all the different virtual networks?
No, you can't do VNet pairing, but what you can do is with that VNet, we attach the gateways to the ExpressRoute circuits.
Okay,
yeah. So again, you can attach up to 4 circuits. We've done smaller, more modest ExpressRoutes where we've had presence in Australia, and for legal reasons we've had to have a VNet in Europe. We've just tacked that onto the circuit. It works surprisingly easily. You can just do everything through the portal now, and it's very easy.
One ExpressRoute circuit.
This is 3. Okay. Yeah, we've done other ones. We've had 1 circuit here in Australia and circuits overseas. Yeah, this is probably the most complicated one. So how that would work is if we might be long lining an application out of the US or running your test dev stuff there because it's cheaper. we configure a route table so your workstation here in Australia attaches to the nearest ExpressRoute circuit and routes through and back. Just important to know, without premium, as it stands now, if you want to access the public or Office 365 services, you will always, well, you should always hit the nearest POP for Microsoft and into their network at the closest place. So if your O365 tenant is in North America, you won't route across the internet to North America before going onto the Microsoft network. You should hit the Microsoft network here in Sydney and then route from there. So by design, it will force you on the closest entry point to their network as possible, depending on their traffic manager or their load, the GSLB stuff that they run to route your traffic. They'll see you're in Sydney, they'll give you the IP address for their local POP. So really the only difference that Premium makes to that picture is you get that private connectivity, that nearest Microsoft POP, but it's not going to give you a big sort of performance boost over and above. You'll still use the Microsoft backbone globally for public services.
Is the latency of the Microsoft backbone much better than what you'd get over the internet anyway?
And anecdotal, I have no data, but anecdotally it is. Yeah. So another thing about Microsoft is a lot of the stuff is a black box, particularly around the networking. So we can only go on experiences and feedback from our customers.
It's like 180 milliseconds to the West Coast and 30 to get to Chicago. So I was thinking,
Yeah. Hey, otherwise, you're at the mercy of your ISP, and who knows what's going on there. It could be just as good, or I guess it's more around that that SLA and or not even SLA really. It's just one person managing it. Yeah. The other use case we're looking at is once everything moves into the cloud, those servers will start talking to each other. AD replication, file and data replication. So again, once you're all in Azure, those servers just use the backbone rather than coming out and back in. ExpressRoute circuit in one of the regions, that would be the entry point in and out. So everyone will have to route through here even if they need to get to their own, or run separate circuits in each region. So again, it's called premium because it comes at a premium price. For something else, it's definitely advantageous for the private connectivity as well. Especially if you're a global organization, you need to connect up these sites. For it, look, you're better off potentially staying with your own global MPLS or IPVPN. Public peering. So again, these are the services that are available over the internet now. It's all public endpoints. What ExpressRoute will do is it will connect you to the Microsoft routers over a private connection, but those services are still public services. So it's yours and everyone else is in your region. And if you've got the premium add-on, that'll all come down through that link. So you best not treat that as the same as the private peering. It's probably a little less risky than the general internet, but you still want to probably segregate that traffic out. Traffic from your VNets through to public traverses the Microsoft network, so it doesn't come off that Microsoft network. So your VNet, your private network, and Azure will route directly to Azure private services, public services, sorry. And again, we need the public ASN and IP range. The issue with these that has been faced, and probably more applicable to the Office 365, is those IP ranges can't be advertised on the internet. We'll get a asymmetric routing. It's not as big an issue with public peering because the connections are unidirectional as far as who initiates the connection. In other words, it's either you on-prem or you in Azure private are always going to initiate the connection, and that's a one-way arrow. Public will never initiate a connection back to you. It's always a response. And the Office 365 peering is the last of the three. So this is your Office 365, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Scope for Business. Dynamics CRM is now on ExpressRoute for Office 365. Again, this will enable your private connectivity bypassing the internet to the Microsoft space, and then you're accessing all the public Office 365. As of a few months ago, it's now only available on successful application to Microsoft. This is a process you need to go through with your Microsoft account team. There's two options they'll consider for enabling this. If you are going to be running Skype for Business online, they'll make you go through a network assessment first, which is either MCS or a partner to run an assessment and say, yes, they'll require Office 365 ExpressRoute. The other option is a regulatory requirement, and speaking to Microsoft, this is not just a, hey, APRA needs all private stuff. You actually have to have a piece of legislation or some kind of legal document stating this is a must, and they'll review it. And yeah, it's a little bit of a hoop to go through. I don't think anyone's actually successfully got that approved on regulatory requirement. Oh yeah, I'm sure they would probably just. I was just going to say number 3, which I haven't put up there, is there's always exceptions to the rules, right? So yeah, look, this is the official 2 points. If you're the DoD or whoever, you can probably shake that tree a little bit harder than the rest of us can.
Is it Cloud PBX? Is that available in Australia?
Not yet, no. So it's a watch the space. Yeah.
I think it's been announced. I think the partner, the first the launch partner in Australia will be Telstra.
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of complexity like PBX stuff that's not inherent to everything else. So yeah.
It requires a lot of work to be done. You've got existing numbers, number portability, and voicemail, and all those sorts of things. It's not a trivial piece of work.
But the law states if you have a telephony company in Australia, you have to have services run out. So you've got to enable 000, and somebody's got to pick up the phone 24/7.
Yeah.
Services by law, which is
Right.
What providers?
Anyone that
Microsoft's, what is it, the second or the third or biggest telco in the world? Skype. But Australia's got different rules and regulations in relation to telephony.
Yeah, the Skype stuff is a whole other plane of existence outside of this and the telephony thing. So, look, as someone who kind of sits on the outside of that, I can see the complexity they're dealing with. So, yeah, I'm not surprised it's taking a little while to get in, but.
The big challenge will be the replacement of existing hardware-based solutions in the enterprise. That's going to take some time to get in. We actually have a couple of guys at Cloud that do business stuff, and for it, Office 365 user group, maybe we can get some of those guys to come and talk. And Aidan actually did a session earlier in the year about Skype for Business and Skype for Business Cloud PBX as well. So,
yeah, so Aidan's involved with the Telstra guys on this as well, so he's actually might not be a bad guy to get into it. Yeah.
I'll do another one of those next year, maybe.
Yeah, I'll come with it. Yeah, so we used to be able to do Office 365. The process was you enable the pairing, you raise a support ticket with Microsoft, and then enable the link through to Office 365, and it was as easy as that. Now we need to jump through these hoops. So why is that? Personal experience of the cloud is we've had a few, like they've never been an easy thing to do. It's not as straightforward as a public or private. Just because this is a public connectivity and it's bi-directional, so you're having inbound NAT, you're advertising source NAT through the internet. There's a lot more moving parts to this than there was for the other two options. So we haven't faced the asymmetric routing, but this was the big one called out by Microsoft. We've mostly dealt with having to tweak inbound NAT, and that's like every customer's got different stuff on the edge. It might be a Juniper, it might be whatever that we're connecting through. So it's the permutations of connecting those through. So really, if you'd speak to anyone on the team at Microsoft, they will say, look, please go on the public internet for Office 365. But if you really have to, we still do have it on ExpressRoute. So that's why they're kind of making it a little more difficult to get it enabled, but it is still there. So the asymmetric routing, I'll just go through what this means. public IP range, not advertising that on the internet, because this is where the problem was generally arising. So if we've got our end user here on the company network, tries to contact 365. We've got our ExpressRoute circuit here, so the traffic comes in, probably goes across the edge firewall. There's a route table there that pushes it back out to Office 365, and that's all great. What happens is, if you've got your IP addresses advertised on the internet, the router's up here in Microsoft land or somewhere. This is a big distributed system. They try to send that back out through the internet. Those IPs may come back to your edge, or it may just disappear off somewhere else. Stateful transmission it's not a response to this. Your edge firewall is probably going to drop that. Something's going to go wrong. So this was the main problem that Microsoft flagged with that. Like I say, we didn't see this problem specifically. We had more trouble around the inbound NAT and the source NAT configuration. Documentation was a little hard to work out. There's a few permutations with the equipment, but we worked with, got it through successfully. Yeah, Microsoft are recommending probably better unless you've got a burning issue to use a public internet for Office 365. But like was mentioned, Cloud PBX will be a game changer. You'll want quas, so ExpressRoute to Cloud PBX, you'll be able to put quas tags on that traffic going through. It's not going to work exactly the way quas works on your managed network. It's more of a blunt instrument, but it's generally something that'll be required. My best guess will be next year, but that's just a finger in the air. It could be sooner or later. Everything with Azure, like, it just drops. Like, you think it's never going to happen, and it drops. Or yeah, the single image instance SLA for the VMs. I submitted a design document on Monday this week, and basically had to go on Wednesday and rewrite it because our design changed, and we could do single instance VMs. So cloud, fast moving. Yeah, so what you need for Office 365 over ExpressRoute, public IPs not advertised publicly. Actually break it if they are available, if they are advertised over the internet. So I put in initially. You never know, it might work for 3 months and then something changes and suddenly it stops working. So it's one of those, maybe fail, maybe not fail. If you've got proxy configuration through pack files or WPADs, that's shifting traffic one way or other, just need to review that for your Office 365 traffic. One thing I didn't mention, you still need public internet for Office 365. Not everything that's Office 365 related will go across ExpressRoute. There's things like CDN. Some of the AD traffic, I think AD Sync is still across the internet. There's a couple of other things. Setting up ExpressRoute. We always used to do this through PowerShell, a little bit of JSON. Now everything, thank goodness, is in the portal. For one-off tasks like this, it's nice to have a GUI. You can go through and just basically fill in all the boxes. This is all you need to fill in to create your ExpressRoute circuit. There's a little submit button there. That'll give you your service key. If you're with a network service provider like Telstra, you just give them that service key, tell them what you want. You'll have ExpressRoute. If you're doing through a Cloud Exchange or a Megaport, you'll need to go in and there's another portal interface there where you put in your IP ranges for the routers and your ASN and everything else and submit that. Dead simple. If you have all the config written down or in a file, you can basically set all this up with 3 minutes of typing and clicking, notwithstanding the spinning wheel that does all the work. So yeah, it's pretty easy. That's it for me on all the stuff I prepared.
So once you've done that thing to get it from another subnet, you just create an NSG and set your rules up or something?
So to connect your VNets?
Yeah.
Yeah, so connecting your VNets, you go into your VNet, you create a gateway, and then you select that gateway, you go connect it to a circuit, you'll get your list of circuits or you want single circuit, you connect to that. And again, it's easy. There's no, you can still do everything through PowerShell and JSON, but like I say, these are generally one-offs. The time you use PowerShell is if you're connecting cross subscriptions, because you'll need to authorize users and create an authorization key. Yeah, so that's when you still need PowerShell for it and those sort of instances.
Yeah, it's all PowerShell.
Yeah.
Here's your templates. They work with this as well?
Yep, absolutely. So I haven't done an ExpressRoute with a template, but colleagues have. I'd spend more time writing the template than doing it in the portal, so path of least resistance for me. And again, for a one-off like this, when you're dealing with physical stuff, I'm probably a little old-fashioned the way my head works. I like to see the fields and click them.
It's probably the least ability to drop and recreate it because it's such a mumble to set it up.
Yeah.
You're not just testing.
Yeah, exactly. If you create a VM off a template, it's easy, just blow it away and create it again. This you're dealing with, this physical routers in the background and providers and all sorts. So exactly, yeah. So I like that they put it into the portal and everything's there. Another thing that's new is we can now import the old classic circuits, and we can connect the classic circuits and the ARM circuits. Sorry, the pairings through the one. Also new in the portal, which I haven't shown here, is they've put troubleshooting tools in. So you've set everything up, you think it's all running. There's no one on the other end who can ping from router to router, but they've put in things like ARP, so you can test ARP, see if they've populated each other's ARP tables, those sorts of things. So it's not in-depth troubleshooting, but there's about 4 different basic smoke tests you can do on the network connectivity, which is good, which was never there before in any option. It was always a case of finding a network engineer at your service provider to do that ping, which wasn't always easy to do. So they've come a long way with this. Like I say, the only bug is that disabled link thing. That's just a good to know. Doesn't affect anything. Everything still works.
We'll easily change SKUs. I remember last time I looked at this, you could go from standard to premium, but to premium you can't go back.
I think on their backlog that'll be
That's still the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can go from standard to premium, you can't go back.
That's pretty heavily documented. I don't think that's a bug.
Yeah, that's not a bug. I'm just saying, is that change? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it, no.
The challenge would be that once you stand up premium, you probably have offshore circuits or other services.
They provision a whole bunch of other stuff.
And winding that back, it's probably you need to make a decision to do that. It's not just click of a button and then submit. It's probably a whole other piece. So there are a lot of those sharp edges in Azure that are there on purpose.
You're not paying per minute either. You're paying. Yeah. So probably at that point you're going to drop it and start again, was what I would agree.
Yeah, look, it might create different kinds of sub interfaces when you do the pairing or something like that. There's probably something on those Microsoft routers or on the VRF.
Yeah. Don't track the billing. The billing doesn't have fingerprints or any of that stuff either. None of that has to be stood up.
Yeah, so it's probably using a whole different template within the Hyper-V or SDN within Azure that we will never see, but probably quite specific to what they're doing. Yeah.
Quick last one. Probably a tough one. Create a public peering in subscription A. So you now get all the public routes, say for Australia East and South East. If you now create subscription B, and you access that subscription B from premises, it's going to get through your network routed through your ExpressRoute. Is it going to work?
Yes, so the public and Office 365 pairing is independent of your subscriptions. Your subscriptions pay for it. What it's done is, it's sent a one-time config to the routers, and then it's outside of Azure. You can use the API to change it, but that routing is on a network level. So the only impact is your subscription is your billing. That circuit will sit somewhere. That's the only
but you can
consideration.
access any subscription from
Absolutely. Yeah. So the public. So with the private, you need gateways on your VNets. With the public, you don't need anything because your routers are talking to each other. That traffic just goes. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we might wrap it up there. So everyone can give Tom a round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
We'll hang around if you've got any questions. Otherwise, feel free to finish whatever pieces there or grab a drink before you leave. By all means, register for our December meetup. I think if you haven't already registered, there's only 10 slots left. Come along for a chance to win a Surface Pro 4. Clearly, that's not the main purpose to come along. The main purpose is to come along and learn about this sort of cool stuff. You know, the Service Pro 4 is just a nice add-on. But yeah, thanks a lot, Tom, for this evening. We'll hang around if you've got any questions. Thanks a lot for you coming, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.